afternoon, GM Morning Brew listeners. Today is a very, very exciting day for our podcast because we are launching a new series, and Tiffany and I couldn't be more excited to do this today. And we're coming at you live from New York, so it's even more exciting because we get to travel for this episode. So today we are introducing a new diversity series, which is called In My Shoes, as part of the Diversity and Inclusion initiatives launched by the Diversity Council. And again, we're so excited about this. There's a famous saying, and Tiff, you might have heard this one before, used in many cultures and languages, that goes, you cannot understand someone until you have walked a mile in their shoes. This saying highlights the importance of empathy towards others. It's also an important factor in diversity and inclusion. Irrespective of our differences, we share the human desire of wanting to be heard, understood, and to belong. Our hope for this series is to encourage and foster dialogue regarding different topics by hearing from our friends and our coworkers of what it's like to be in their shoes.
We are super excited to kick this off, especially with the two fabulous ladies we have with us today. We've got Shernice Charles, a billing coordinator from our Cypress Creek office in Florida. And then we have Aaliyah Nelson, who is a partner right here in our New York office. Thank you both very much for being here, and we're very excited to hear your experiences.
We are going to kick off, and Shernice, if it's okay, we would we're going to start with you today. And Shernice, my first question for you, being a parent is challenging, but what unique challenges have you experienced as a Black parent?
One of the biggest challenges that I face on a daily basis, having a male child, is trying to explain to him double standards and how he can tell the difference between one race is allowed or permitted to do something versus another. When they're kids, it's really, really, truly hard to explain the double standards because kids, when they're young, they know no race or color of a person's skin. This is their friend, and that's all they know. But then that language changes as they get older because there are big differences between what standards they have to be governed by. We all, encourage our kids to go for whatever they strive to be, whatever they achieve, want to achieve in life. It's just that I had to tell my son, yes, you can obtain and you can achieve all of those goals. It's just that the path that you choose may have some roadblocks that are different than other challenges or roadblocks that other people of his counterparts may face.
So, Shernice, we hope as parents to protect our kids' innocence in childhood as long as possible. Are there any tough conversations that you've had to have with your children that are driven by your experiences as a Black person? And when about did you have those conversations?
So, there are a lot of conversations that you have stemming back from our ancestors where, we were taught when you go into a store, you don't touch anything, you don't request anything. So that goes all the way back to our ancestors where they weren't allowed to have physical contact with other races or to even, speak eye to eye with someone who was white. So you kind of have that conversation when the child starts to realize that there are differences because their friends have been taught that Ernst is different than you, or Ernst can't go where you go, or he can't participate in certain sports, or he can't do certain things that you do. If the police pulls him over, the protocol for him is to pull over, stick your hands out the window to make sure that the police know that you don't have a weapon or that you don't pose a threat, versus his counterpart who would probably just get pulled over, may get out the car and have a conversation with a police officer. Those are different experiences that even that I've had in driving a car with an out of state tag when when I rented a car going to Orlando, having to make sure that I contact before I leave to let people know I'm getting on the road, and then contact them when I get there to let them know that I made it safely. And that's just a 3 hour ride. Um, my son faces that same challenge because of the way he chooses to wear his hair. Um, he's already judged and stereotyped and listed as a thug or a drug dealer or something like of that nature just because of his appearance. So one of the biggest things that I always tell people that I can change my hair color, I can change my job. One thing I can't change is the color of my skin. And my skin to some people poses a threat, poses judgment, passes judgment. No matter what I do, I have to be conscientious of how I do things and how I say things so that it doesn't get misconstrued as being angry or belligerent or being misunderstood all the way around.
And Shanice, a follow-up question I have for you, because I'm a mother myself, I would say I'm still in the category of new mother because I have toddlers. So I haven't done middle school, high school yet. And I recognize when I'm asking you this as a mom who's not a Black mother. But when you're having these conversations with your kids, for example, and I'm asking you this because I have a 4-year-old, especially when they're younger, to your point, they are so innocent. Was there ever pushback or misunderstanding or, like, but why, mom? And then how do you handle that as a parent? Because I can imagine that's difficult too.
Well, I usually present to him like Black history movies. We'll sit down and we may watch Roots, or we may watch The Color Purple. We may watch stories about Martin Luther King, stories about Malcolm X, to let them see some of the injustices and the disparities that our ancestors have faced. People that are not far removed from me. He's also had conversations with his grandmother, my mom, who was around during the civil rights movements and all of that. So he will get an idea and to know that, yeah, your grandmother had to sit at a certain spot in this store, and she couldn't drink from this particular water fountain. And a lot of times people are like, they see it on television, but they don't know that didn't really happen. But when he had the reality check, when my mom explained to him some of the things that she experienced, even with me as a child, some of the things that, like going in when we went into a store, and I just recently found this out while doing this, preparing for this broadcast, was that I had to literally put my hands in my mom's coat pocket when we went to a store. And that was to ensure that I wasn't going to take anything. And my mom said she can't remember how old I was at the time, but she knew that I had to keep one of my hands in her pocket and my other hand in my pocket, but just to make sure that she held on to me, or to ensure that I wasn't going to take anything. That was one of the things that she experienced with me as a child when it came down to going into a store. So I shared that story with my son, and he was just like, oh my goodness, because he couldn't believe that someone so close to him, because he doesn't think my grandmother, and he doesn't think we're old, so that's a good thing, experienced that. And when he was growing up, my fear was always him because of him being a male child. But as I've gotten older and I've seen how the climate is in the world right now with racism, I realized that I have built up those same intimidation feelings when I get pulled over by the police as well. I still still tell him to make sure that when he's traveling, to make sure he goes during the day and not at night, especially if he's traveling in unfamiliar areas, because of him getting pulled over, being, stereotyped or profiled, So, so we have those difficult conversations. We have them early, because people started treating him differently. My son went to school in Davie. He went to Beacon Hill in Davie, and there weren't too many Black kids in his school. We ended up taking him out and putting him in public school because he experienced, not even realizing that he was experiencing a form of racism, but he experienced some things where, some of the parents, they had parties for their kids. They invited my son to come. We would go, but when it came down to his party, none of his friends were able to come here. So, and you're right, they do. They're toddlers. They start asking questions of why couldn't they come here? And then, as a mother, your mindset is to protect their feelings. You don't want them to get hurt. So you tell them, oh, it was too far, or they had something else to do, or whatever. But then later on, as they get older and they really see, they can really relate and understand, oh, wow, that person doesn't want me around because I look a certain way, or I talk a certain way, or because I wear certain clothes, or because I'm Black.
So, Shernice, your son is now a father with young toddlers. What advice do you give him?
Well, I just try to let him, he has his own experiences with certain disparities. But my grandkids are biracial. So that's going to be proposed, that's going to create different challenges for them because of that. So I tell him, when they start to recognize the difference, when someone, hopefully never does, but when someone calls them or disrespects them because of who they are or not what they are, then he needs to have that sit down conversation about why they are different, or why they're being judged differently, or why they have double standards.
Do your concerns for your grandsons differ at all from those of your son when you were raising him? Dealing with everyday interactions, are they the same?
They're pretty much the same. The blessing that I think I have is that I have two grandsons that are very close in age, and hopefully, they will grow up to be, really close and tight and watch out for each other and protect each other. Whereas my son, he was the only child, so he only had his friends to rely on and to help, go through certain experiences together.
Got it.
So, what advice could you give other parents who want to discuss racial issues with their kids?
I don't know if I would say advice, more so than to ask a question. I guess my first thing would be to ask the question, when you see me, what do you see? And I've done that with some of my friends, and it amazes me because the first thing that they say, I see a strong Black woman. So you don't see me as a woman, but you see me as Black first. And that's the thing that when people say, but I'm not a racist, but you saw race before you saw me as a woman or a mother or a biller or an HOA president. You didn't see any of that. The first thing you notice is that I'm Black. So that would be my first thing, to have an open dialogue with someone, to ask that question. And then I think that if we had a historical overview, to provide them with a historical overview of this whole country, what we experienced yesterday, or when the lady came on about Tulsa. I was really enlightened about that because there was that story that she told was very similar to that of Emmett Till. And so I didn't even know that that's what caused the massacre there. So it was really informative. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that needs to be taught is the historical overview of our entire country.
Thank you for that, Sharnice. Thank you for sharing your experiences and thoughts.
Yeah, I truly appreciate it. We've worked together, Sharnice, I'm not going to say it out loud because it's a long number, but I do, and honestly, like my heart goes out to you as a mother because the reality that you just presented is that you have worries, about your children and these conversations that not every mother has to have. So I really appreciate you highlighting that.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to find out what it's like to be in my shoes.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Aaliyah, we have you with us as well. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Aaliyah is a partner in our New York office, for those of you who might not know her yet. So thank you so much for being here.
We are interested in hearing about your experience as a Black female in the legal fields. So can you tell us a little bit about how it may have impacted your career path?
For those who don't know, I guess the elephant in the room is that I am the only Black woman partner at Greenspoon Marder. And there's a lot of attorneys. And it's funny, it colors my walk and doesn't color my walk at the same time. And it's kind of the story of my life is the story of my career. And that's basically that I'm from New York, born and I'll say quasi-bred because my family, we didn't do summer camp. My family is from Louisiana and they're Creole, and this is my maternal side. And they sent me down south for training every summer of my life. So I had this crazy existence where I was from this like over the top cosmopolitan place, and then I would get shipped way down south and be like transported, 15 years prior. It was crazy. And then I would come back to New York. And the other thing that colors my existence is that my family is multi-ethnic. Both sides of my mother and my father, identify as Black. My great-grandfather was Jewish and Ashkenazi Jew. This is on my maternal side. And my other grandmother was Portuguese and Cape Verdean. So it just looks like, the United Colors of Benetton in my household. Multiple languages were spoken, multiple foods were eaten. And then I'm from New York on top of everything, which makes me like honorary Jamaican, honorary Dominican, honorary everything. And so when you grow up like that, I always remember there was a woman in Sex and the City, and she used to say, "I'm a citizen of the world, darling." And that's how I feel. I lived in Paris in my late teens, 20s. Studying. I came back to the States. I have traveled all over the world. I went to Nigeria by myself, for God's sake. And I had been to the continent of Africa twice before I'd ever been to LA. Wow. So I've had a crazy sort of like very over the top world experience and world exposure. So I have, and then I always teach people and say, and on top of all that, because of education and just environment, socioeconomics, many times I am a chocolate chip in a bowl of milk. So I totally am always, wherever I lay my head is my home. And I'm very comfortable around so many different types of people. And I've never been any place I wasn't comfortable because of who I am or what I look like, or, and there's privilege in that. So I didn't think twice, about joining Greenspoon, even though I knew that there were not people at the top who truly looked like me, because that is the world of the law. That is the law across the board, and there's so many things like that I've joined and done and been a part of, and where I'm like, hey, I may be the first, but my goal is to not be the last. And if it's not me, then who? And build a bridge for someone else to cross.
Right. You impact others in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't, I can't say I don't care, but I don't walk in this world in a way that it affects my day to day, but it does make me very introspective. It makes me look at certain issues or things that happen. And then, as a Black woman in this place, in this position, in this moment, you are looking at it through a lens of, is this race? I don't know. And so I started out in the music industry before I started doing more corporate work. And to me, that was a tougher place to be as a Black woman. There were as a matter of fact, I worked for the woman who started the Black Entertainment and Sports Lawyers Association when I was in law school and when I was a young associate. And, she was considered the godmother of entertainment law. Tidbit on that is a counsel at our firm, Kendall Minter. He's a co-founder of that organization with her. And so it was like, coming together when I ended up working with Kendall again. It was great. But that was a harder place to be as a Black woman because music industry is just so male dominated. That was the moment where I felt, wow, I'm young and I'm a Black woman. And this is, it's a challenge to move in a way that I'm comfortable moving in this space. And I think even though it might have been other professionals, a lot of the professionals were of color, it was like the double isms. Like you don't know whether you're getting, butted in the head by things because you're a woman or is it because I'm a Black woman? But as my career moved away from just music and I started to do other things and built up a name for myself and moved in different worlds, it's always going to color your existence, but it didn't color my day in the same way. If that makes sense. I hope it makes sense.
It does. And to pick up on that, then have you ever felt that maybe there are misconceptions or preconceived notions you face on a regular basis? And then kind of to touch on what you said, maybe that more so in the music industry than the legal field or vice versa?
Well, I think it's just as a whole in society. And, the legal field is a specific little microcosm of society. And, there's elitism and all of those things. I think the first thing that jumps out at me is, and Shanice touched upon it, was that whole trope of a strong Black woman and what that means and how you're supposed to live or being anyone who truly knows Black people of the diaspora knows that we are nowhere near a monolith. It's insane how many different cultures and languages and upbringings. Like my husband's family is solidly from the South. My family is sort of from the South, sort of from the North, multi-ethnic with all types of craziness. And so, like I'll tell you the funny thing, they always tease, especially around New Year's Eve, when they're like, well, to my husband, you better go to your mama's if you want black-eyed peas and collard greens for New Year's Eve. That's a Southern thing that's not Creole. It's like more South Carolina, North Carolina culture. They eat it for luck. And I didn't know that. So when we first got married, he was looking at me like, oh, New Year's Eve. Oh yeah, I can't wait I'm wait for what? I was like, I got some jambalaya popping in that kitchen right there. And then it was like the running joke in the family that, even though he married, quote unquote, the Black woman, he married an other. Or when we found out that I was a carrier of the Tay-Sachs gene, which is a Ashkenazi, like the Jewish version of sickle cell, and he goes into the office with me at the doctor's and the doctor's like, what's a Black chick named Aaliyah carrying Tay-Sachs doing in my office? So I had to explain that to him and, so, and then on top of that, I went to Cardozo for law school. So I was just like batting 1,000. So, glad that ex who was Jewish in Cardozo, we didn't quite work out, but, genetically I did all right for myself. Yeah, so that's the thing that jumps out, that trope of who I am as a woman, who I'm supposed to be. And then when you defy it, or you live differently, or you just don't fit the model, the level of just like shock that you get from people, or and to go back to the strong Black woman concept, while practicing, I have given birth to 3 children, the third of which I had severe preeclampsia and almost died. I was in ICU. He was a premature child at 3 pounds 8 ounces. That made me take a step back from the law, and I ended up, working as a professor and just kind of working part time throughout all of that, because I'm a person that, I'm like a shark. If I stop moving, I die. So I was doing something, but I couldn't work at the level I wanted to work at, and I, have had strife, from family situations and different things, and I would just bawl and cry, or like when I just got frustrated, whether it was in the office or something with my kids' school, and just like this reaction that people would have, like, wait a minute, she's a strong Black woman. What is she doing? And then I would tease and say, okay, well, do you understand Becky Tears? That's what this is. I'm having a moment. And that's that. That's that. Before anything, like Shanice mentioned, I'm a woman. I'm a mom. I am, I'm an only child, and that makes me walk in the world a certain way. Yep, there you go. We like asking for money. It's what we specialize in. So, I just, I'm so many things, but in this reality, in this world, just because of the inequities, I have to shout it from the rooftops that I'm a Black woman. And that is primary to who I am, because to live in any other direction could be detrimental to myself, detrimental to my husband, detrimental to my children. And so it affects my politics. It affects the decisions I make. It affects opportunities I go after or forego. And it affects, like, perfect examples. I live in Westchester County in New York. I live in New Rochelle, which was one of the first neighborhoods to integrate in Westchester County and have Blacks and Jews able to buy property. I was in contract in a house in another town, a town I will not mention, and I loved the house. But when I looked at what I saw going on, from a discrimination perspective within the real estate industry in that town, as well as the schools, I made an active decision to go with a house that I liked it. I didn't love it the way I love the other one, but I was like, at the time I only had my eldest, but I have a Black boy, and I want him to be able to ride his bike around this lake, not have anyone follow him, treat him a certain way. I want neighbors that know that, we're the Black family next door and they care and all this good stuff. And I made that decision, and it was a decision I made with race at the forefront.
So, Aaliyah, speaking to that and how it comes into play in certain things you're doing every day, does your experiences as a Black woman, do they have effect on the way you practice law, the way you strategize for clients, or approach a deal, anything like that?
Absolutely. Pay equity. Women get paid less than men, and Black women get paid less than that. So economically, it shapes our world in such a way that that's always in the top or the forefront of my mind. And I'll give you a perfect example. There are times where I know I have, just taken an L from a billing perspective, or just went the extra mile, worked with people on whether bringing in their retainer and paying bills and everything else based on, their status as, a Black startup. Black startups, minority, I'll say Black because, those tend to be most of my clients, some Latin, and, but of my clients, the ones of color, they have a heavier lift as it relates to capital. They don't have access to capital the way mainstream and white companies do, or just white individuals for that matter. It's exposure. It's being blocked out of industries. I mean, look, cannabis is a perfect example. You got a whole, two generations of Black men are locked up for selling weed. And now, go to Denver and who's the millionaire? And now there's in the states that rolled out social equity programs for up until now, they have benefited everyone except for the communities that were hit the hardest. So I have clients who are quote unquote legacy entrepreneurs who are now building businesses now that cannabis is opening up in New York, and they're doing things to move themselves and put themselves in positions to be ready to exploit this change and this push for social equity. I represent companies. A specific company I'm thinking of is a Black woman-led gaming company who is coming on board, and she has if she was in a different position, she would have long been funded. And the types of offers she's getting from VCs and funds they're laughable, and I know because I've been on the other side of deals for mainstream companies, and anyone with her profile, wouldn't be at this place where they're still like scrapping for seed funding. So, it affects my practice because, there's it's like someone's pulling my heartstrings saying, this has got to change. We deserve a chance. We're talented. We built this freaking country, for God's sake. And, everyone wins when the tide rises all ships. We're not going to win. First of all, you got to educate your women, and you have to make a society that is beneficial for everybody there. COVID showed you what life could look like if we really truly lived in a third world nation and didn't have the resources we have in America. And at the end of the day, and that's the beauty of New York is, you can be the millionaire next door and have housing projects around the corner. So do you want lawlessness in your neighborhood? Well, then I guess you better work a little harder to make sure your neighborhood supports those who are less fortunate and looks the way you want it to look if you're going to be that millionaire next door. So yeah, it definitely colors my practice and the way I feel about my clients and my opportunities and who I can help and how I can help them.
To piggyback on that, because you do have a very successful practice and you are in this wonderful leadership role, and I can imagine, I'm sure, are a mentor to many, but what is your advice to people of color and particularly Black women who want to become lawyers or perhaps are lawyers already, but, looking to advance, looking to, become mentored, become the partner, become in a leadership role? What is your advice to them based on, your experience, your day to day?
The same advice I give mothers who want to go back into the workforce. You've been a CEO since the moment you became a mom. You know what it is to be a CEO. You may not have the title, but you're doing it. You're wearing all the hats. You work so hard. You give so much. You deserve it. And don't let anyone tell you no. Be extremely radical about self-care so that you can function at a certain level. And when you're in a place where you're a new mom and you have to lean out and you don't feel as, professionally driven and, you're just trying to get your feet about you as it relates to kids and everything else, it's perfect. And as a woman, we can have it all, but we just can't have it all at once. So lean out when you have to lean out. And then when the kids are actually, all going to the bathroom by themselves and can maybe get a snack or two and do the other, just a little more independent, and you're ready to lean in hard. And that means that, there's more boxed macaroni and cheese at the table. And, you're asking your husband to step it up and do different things. And, you outsource or do whatever you have to do it unapologetically. Do it unapologetically. And as women, we get guilted because, when the kids show up in July in their winter coats at McDonald's, they don't say, look at that dad. They're like, oh, look at the dad. He brought the kids to McDonald's. If you're with the mom and they have on the winter coat and it's July and they're at McDonald's, oh, she's a trash mom. Oh, this is ridiculous, or whatever else. We're judged harshly as women. And so it's like, that requires extra thick skin and a level of arrogance to combat it that you have to have. Don't apologize. Save yourself. And as a Black woman, when there was a period where I stayed at home and there was judgment there. You're a Black woman. I'm like, look, that's part of this civil rights movement. The right to be able to stay home and nurse my baby. It's, this is me exercising the rights that my ancestors fought for, being a stay at home or not, going after a partnership at a law firm or not. There's nothing in this world that I don't deserve. And that's what I tell students, young attorneys, do it and do it unapologetically. Because this is one life that I know of. I mean, if something checks out and I bet on the wrong team, oh, well, too late. But right now, I just, I want to create a life that gives me my best life so I can be my best self and in turn pour my best self back into my children and my community and, leave my mark. And at least for me, that's the way I do it. And that's what I believe my success stems from.
What would one thing that you wish that somebody may have told you when you started practicing law?
Someone did give me a perfect piece of advice that I should have heeded. And that was my grandfather. My grandfather said, he was a jazz musician. And he used to always say, baby, do what you love and the money will follow. And he made his living, doing exactly that. He was a great artist, played with Duke Ellington, Erskine Hawkins. He lived in the Bronx and jogged around Yankee Stadium every single day until even the day that he left this earth. And I didn't do that. I made a lot of decisions in my career based on, I want to, I want to have a family and I want this and I need this. So I have to do that. And I'm going to take this job because everybody else wants it, even though I don't want it. And, I'm going to stay in this practice, even though I'm miserable because, people tell me to just keep pushing this practice in this way. And it took me a long time to find the happy in my career. And I had to really lean in and accept emotionally that stop walking a path as it relates to the job, the law, whatever it is, because somebody else said, this is that, this is it, this is great, this is where it's at. Just because other people want to be in the music industry and that's their end game, if you don't like it, you don't like it. Accept that and move on. What do you like? Are there things about it that you still like? Is there a way to practice, or when I had a private practice and I was like, I hated every aspect of the administrative side of running a law firm. I was just like, Sunday was gloom and doom unless a Game of Thrones was on. Now Game of Thrones changed things in a real way. So
you miss those Sundays.
Yes. Oh. But yeah. And then when I started just like saying, stop being pissed that somebody else has what you want, go after what you want, go get it for yourself. Change you don't have to do this. This is not it. There's other ways. Go find them and beat the pavement till you get it and you find yourself in a happy place. So had I just like heeded my grandfather's do what you love and the money will follow, I would have been a lot better off about, I hate to say like 13 years ago, 13, 14, 15 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, but live and learn, right?
Yep.
Part of it. Shernice, Aaliyah, thank you so much. Shernice, do you have, any final thoughts, anything you want to, share with our listeners before we get going today?
No, I'm good. I think that a lot of information has been given, and I'm so glad that this is a conversation that needed to be had, and I'm glad that Green Spoon Water took the time to have it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you both for speaking with us today.
Yeah, putting our trust in us. When the Diversity Council approached us, we were very ecstatic. Yeah. We love doing the podcast, and thank you for letting us walk in your shoes because it is truly eye-opening and it's so meaningful. And I hope every listener listens to this, and not just once, maybe twice. Yeah. Because it's been incredible. So thank you.
I'm very honored. I thank you for the opportunity. I love this. It made me feel really good. Like, all you can do in this world is, be open to educating yourself and being an ally. And that's truly where it begins. So I'm just ecstatic that the firm supported something like this. And, And thank you for letting me be me.
Well, thank you for being you. Both of you, just amazing advice, amazing stories. Honestly, as a mother, my heart goes out to both of you, but also I'm so thankful because you both gave advice and touch on pieces that, will shape me. I love it, by the way, CEO. I like that. I'm going to take that forever and run with it. That will help shape me as a mother with my children. So thank you so much for that. We have more In My Shoes series coming up. This is our first episode. We were excited to launch it, but a lot more episodes to come. So be on the lookout for more. Thank you again.
Thank you.
This is the Morning Brew Crew signing off.